My name is Greg Merricle with the Septage program for the last, 4 years. Prior to that, I was with Water Resource Division Biosolids program for 18-ish years. So if you do the math, I know what you're thinking. I can't possibly be that old, but I am. But that's a whole lot of wastewater knowledge that I've accrued in that time period. And so that's why they've tapped me to come and talk to you about the wastewater, various types, and how they are so complicated and how they relate to each other. So I always start by saying, go to our website, because I hate when people call me and they don't know anything that they're asking me about. So go to the website. And the Septage program, I think it's called a hot link or a hotkey, I can't remember, but it has a pretty easy website to remember. It's michigan.gov/Eagle Septage. Takes you right to the Septage website, which is actually like 26, numerals and characters and whatnot. But if you just type Eagle Septage, it takes you right there, which is pretty convenient. This is what it looks like for the next few days, at least. They're about to change it. I'm told it's going to be better, but I was told that last time they changed the website, and it wasn't. But, it is what it is. It's going to be similar. You'll see like the search box at the top. It should say Septage near the top, so you know you're in the right spot. If you scroll down, you'll see all the other important stuff for our program. And this is true of any of the programs that you go to. Right here is the important stuff I'm going to talk to you about today. Every program website will have a laws and rules page where you can click on that and you'll get to something that looks like this. And then if you click on that, you'll get to some messy thing that looks like this that goes to the legislature. And each one of those links on the left side takes you to a horribly formatted law, right? And it is bad. And you're like, why is it like this? Why has it got to be this way? Well, it doesn't. If you go to the top right here, it says printer-friendly version. See, you're learning things right here. So you can see if you click on printer-friendly version, it takes you to an option for an HTML page or a PDF. I prefer PDFs, but you do you. And then you get to something like this, properly formatted, looks awesome, it's all together. You can print this off, and I have like a beat up copy of Part 117 and all the laws I'm going to talk to you about today on my desk. And I highlight and mark it and star things and rip pages out and rearrange it so it makes sense to me, that kind of thing. Did I mention I'm dyslexic? So, I got to change things around so they make sense to me. The thing about the laws, we have a lot of them. I don't know if you're aware. And it can be very tedious. And you don't have to read a law very far before you realize you need to learn how to read a law, right? And so there's some important things. People oftentimes, when you start a big novel, sometimes there's like, definitions at the front. People skip that, right? In a law, when you're reading a law, don't skip the definitions. The definitions are where a lot of the meat and potatoes are. So part of 117, the septage law, very important is the definitions, particularly like domestic septage. Means liquid or solid material removed from a septic tank, cesspool, portable toilet, blah, 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 yada, 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 right? Well, that's pretty important stuff to know. What is septage? What is domestic septage? This is also, the definitions tell you what it is, what septage is not in this case. So it's even more important. Domestic septage does not include liquid or solid material removed from a septic tank, cesspool, similar facility that receives either commercial wastewater or industrial wastewater, and does not include grease trap waste removed from a grease interceptor or other appurtenance. The law uses appurtenance a lot. I don't know why. Used to retain grease or fatty substances contained in restaurant grease. Okay, so remember this. It tells you what septage is, tells you what septage is not in the very same definition, and then it says grease trap waste is not ever going to be septage, which is not true. Domestic sewage is defined, means waste or wastewater from humans or household operators. So basically human-derived waste, kitchen and bathroom, right? Domestic treatment plant septage means biosolids. Oh, biosolids. Generated during the treatment of domestic sewage in a treatment works or transmitted by a treatment facility or managed in accordance with a residuals management program. Those are Part 24 words, biosolids program. Defined in Part 117, the septage law. Now here, remember I said it says food establishment septage is not, grease trap waste is not septage, and then it turns around right here and says, well, actually it kind of is, can be. Food establishment septage is material pumped from a grease trap interceptor, grease trap or other appurtenance, again, used to retain grease, fatty substances, yada, yada, yada. If blended into a uniform mixture consisting of not more than 1 part of that restaurant-derived waste and 3 parts septage, it is septage. So in one definition it says this is not septage, and then a few definitions later it comes back and says, well, it could be. So sanitary sewer cleanout septage. What if you have to clean out a sewer for a wastewater plant? Is that septage? Yep. Sanitary sewage or cleanout residue removed from a separate sanitary sewer collection system that is not land applied and that is transported by a vehicle licensed under this part elsewhere within the same system or to a receiving facility that is approved by the department, right? So there's a lot to unpack in there, and if you're experienced in reading the law right there, you might have picked up on some of those things. You can transport it to the same wastewater plant or a different wastewater plant with a licensed septage truck and a licensed septage business. Or elsewhere within the same system or to a receiving facility that is approved by the department. So if we say you can do it, you can do it. That's basically what that says. And there's a lot of instances of that in the various laws. Septage waste, finally, means the fluid mixture of untreated and partially treated sewage, solids, liquids, and sludge of human or domestic origin that are removed from a wastewater system. And here's another 2-part definition. Septage waste consists only of food establishment septage. That's that 3-to-1 mixture that I told you about. Domestic septage, domestic treatment plant septage, or sanitary sewer cleanout septage, or any combination of these. This is the definition of septage. So all that stuff about the industrial wastewaters and those solids, not septage. That basically ends the important definitions in Part 117, but my point in showing you those is not so you learn Part 117, but so you can understand how important the definitions in the laws are, right? It tells you, in 2 pages what septage is, what septage isn't. It tells you some things that you can do, what things that you can't do. It backtracks a few times and tells you different things than it just told you, and you just gotta be on your toes and read those definitions. This is kind of a funny thing. So the septage program licensing requirement. A person shall not engage in servicing or contract to engage in servicing. Servicing is when you pump a tank, haul it to wastewater plant or to land application. Maybe I should have put that definition in there. Except as authorized by a septage waste servicing license and a septage waste vehicle license issued by the department pursuant to Part 13, which is administrative stuff. You don't need to know that. The second part of this requirement, the septage waste servicing license and septage waste vehicle license requirements provided in this part are not applicable to a publicly owned receiving facility subject to a permit issued under Part 31. So back when I said you could, if you were a wastewater plant, you could pump septage, or if you were a septage hauler, you could pump septage from the collection system and put it back in the collection system or take it to a wastewater treatment plant. You actually don't need to be licensed to do that. If it's within the same collection system, any Tom, Dick, or Harry with a vac truck could do that for a wastewater treatment plant. And in fact, wastewater treatment plants often do it themselves without license. So it's just kind of, when you read the laws, you have to kind of think of these, how everything plays together, kind of like, cogs in a big system. The other thing that's really important to look for in the laws are exemptions. Exemptions can be crazy, and that that second part of the licensing requirement is a kind of exemption. So a permitted wastewater treatment plant is basically exempt from doing any work in their own system from Part 117. So exemptions are important. There's a new exemption you might have heard of if you've got some MDARD people here, I heard. So it's a weird requirement. It's a federal requirement for farm workers to have bathroom facilities closely available to them, and it's so that they're not tempted to contaminate the vegetable crops with human waste and then distribute it to you guys, which seems like a good idea. But there's an exemption specifically written about farm workers and providing porta-johns to them and hand wash stations, and it's required by the feds, and we had to make it happen quick. And it allows them to basically short-term and in small quantities act as a septic hauler without being licensed. That's what that's about. Another weird thing to look for is preemptions. So most state laws will come right out and say, no local ordinances or laws or other, trump state law. State law is it. Part 117 is one of the very few laws that allow local county or township ordinances to take preemption. So if you want to write an ordinance and you want to be more strict than Part 117, you're free to do so within reason. We have to approve it, I think. But this is just, you don't need to know the exemption. So again, the definitions are far more important than what most people think initially, right? And so you have to read the laws, and it takes a long time to get really good with the laws. I like to think of my job as knowing those laws and I kind of put them on a mental, like a corkboard, right? And so whenever I get a question from somebody, it's like I'm throwing darts at the corkboard with all the laws lined up, right? And I see, okay, this dart clearly is going to, hit 117. This dart's clearly going to hit, Part 24, which is the biosolids rules. So we got Part 24, the biosolids rules. This is my mental corkboard, by the way. I'm putting it out here for you guys. Then we've got Part 121, which is liquid industrial byproduct program, which is that industrial wastewater that Part 117 said is not septage, no way, shape, how. And then kind of the last biggie is Part 115, which is the solid waste law, right? So why are these for the big players? Well, because if it stinks, the question's gonna come to me. My phone's gonna ring. And so 99% of the time, it's either gonna be Part 115, Part 24, 121, or you're gonna dry the material, and then it's Part 115. I said Part 115 twice. Part 117 was what I meant to say the first time. So Part 115 is everything. So you take all these stinky solids, you dry it out, get rid of the water. Maybe you take the water to the wastewater plant. Now it fits in a roll-off box, for instance, or it passes what the landfills call a paint filter test, which literally is like it sounds. You take the stuff, put it in the paint filter, and see if any water comes out after a certain period of time. If it passes the paint filter test, it can go to landfill under Part 115, and it is no longer septage or biosolids or liquid industrial byproduct. So this is kind of my dartboard at this point. There's other things that come into play here. Hazardous Materials Transportation Act, that's kind of a, it's kind of, yeah, you know it when you see it kind of thing. If it's a hazardous material, there's a list, Bodies of Dead Animals Act, if they're going to transport dead animals, there's various particular ways that you have to deal with those. Oil recycling, again, particular ways to deal with used oil and whatnot. And then medical waste, again, there's no denying what medical waste is. Actually, our septic haulers go to a doctor's office, a rural doctor's office, they'll have two separate systems. They'll have a septic system that has the human waste component in it, and they'll have another system that has the medical waste in it. And so they have to know which system are you pulling the lids off of to pump. Is it the septic system or is it the medical waste system? Anyways, so our mental dartboard just got bigger, right? And like I said, some of those darts hit right on, and some of those darts are like right in the cracks between laws, and you have to kind of figure out what to do in those cases, and that's where your years of experience come in, right? So there's a heck of a lot to learn, and it can feel almost like getting another degree, or it can feel like you're being punished to learn all these things, right? Some people might say these eagle, jerks. I almost swore. These eagle jerks are just trying to have their job security, right? And I don't think that's true. We'd much rather you guys handle these questions than us, if it can all be done possibly. And we get it. We understand it's a lot to learn, and it's crazy to expect you guys to pick up all these different laws. I mean, I only put 8 up there. There's 30 probably that you could really pick apart and dive into to figure out how to handle all this wastewater, right? Kind of like a dark little secret is that we're really good at creating resources to get this information out to you guys, but we're really terrible at telling you that those resources exist, right? Terrible. So what I would suggest, you go back to the website, there's that handy dandy search box at the top, right? Now remember this, if you don't remember anything else that I told you today, there's something called the Guide to Environmental Regulations. If you type in that handy dandy search box, Guide to Environmental Regulations, you will get to a page that looks like this. Now, if you want to go to Google search box, type in Michigan Guide to Environmental Regulations. It gets you to the same place. But when you scroll down to this, you'll see all these chapters in this guide, and they talk about really anything you could care to know about, really. One of the things that you could do is click on that link right there next to the arrow, and you'll get the whole dang book. I think it's close to 500 pages. That's a lot of pages. I don't like to do it that way. The chapters, I find, have very helpful titles and will get you to the information that you need. And the chapters are much more manageable. They're 30 to 50 pages or whatever. I don't actually know. I haven't looked at all of them. But if you go look at that chapter 3, it's handily titled Wastewater, right? And this is what chapter 3 looks like. Now, man, I'm kicking butt. I'm going to end my slideshow here because I figured, why would I just show you, lots and lots of pages of this chapter 3 when I could just go to the document itself and show you. Yeah. What? Question?
Are you trying to be on the internet?
Oh, I'm not on the internet. It's PDF. So this is actually a PDF of chapter 3. You can, when you click on those links, you can download the PDF to your desktop. That's what I do. I have chapter 3 on my desktop because it's useful. So if you look at chapter 3, you've got everything here you could think of. You've got POTWs, public effluent treatment works, hazardous waste, liquid industrial byproducts, septage transportation, pump and haul. These are the meat and potatoes of wastewater. Surface water discharge, groundwater discharge, deep injection well disposal. Chapter 3 is where it's at if you're interested in the quirkiness of all the wastewater that's generated in Michigan or anywhere really. So we've got Common non-compliance and frequently asked questions. You've got water treatment plant additives. You guys ever get questions about that? Cooling water, floor drains. I'm sure you've gotten questions about floor drains, right? Restrooms, break rooms, air compressor condensate. You've probably heard questions about air compressor. Hey, I got this shop. I've got, everything runs on compressed air. What can I do with this condensate? Everything you could possibly think of is here. So remember, like I said, we're not trying to be jerks and ensuring our job security. We just really suck at advertising the resources that we put out for you guys. Let's see, and this is updated all the time, this guidebook. So if you want to scroll through here, one of the very first things it talks about are the different agencies and their laws and rules. And if you look through this, you'll see like, well, NPDES program is administered by Water Resources Division, and it's talks about groundwater and Water Resource Division, Eagle's on-site wastewater program. I hear those guys are hard to get along with. Eagle septic program is on here. Now this is just a bunch of words and it's confusing, and you might be saying, hey Greg, this is just as confusing as all those laws you showed me. Well, maybe, but look at this. Here's a wastewater key. It's basically a flow diagram. So you can ask yourself these questions when you get that phone call and you're like, where does this dart land? You ask yourself these questions and it'll kind of direct you to where the dart lands. And it tells you where to go in this section to find this information. Right? Is it direct discharge or indirect discharge? Do they have an NPS permit? Do they have a state permit? Is it a deep well injection? No. Is it a treatment plant? Is it a pump and haul? So you have basically this pretty awesome tool that you can use to figure all this stuff out. And I suggest maybe that you could read this instead of reading all those 30 laws and trying to figure out which laws to read and figuring out which laws have important definitions and which exemptions apply and all that stuff. That you can still relegate to the professionals at Eagle who would be very happy to answer your phone call if you familiarized yourself with this or worked through this process in the guide. Now you're prepared to have a meaningful conversation with us when we pick up the phone, right? And that's the goal. We want you guys to have as much information as we can get to you without overburdening, without making you spend 20 years learning those 30 laws. Let's see. We got combined sewers, separate sewers, all kinds of crazy stuff in here. So that's kind of it. My whole goal was to get to the point where you guys understand what laws are kind of in play, but also, more importantly, there's this important resource out there that you guys can use. And we put it on our website. Now,